Emily Thompson never imagined that her life would change in a single phone call. 5 years ago, on a quiet evening, she was preparing dinner in their small apartment in Lagos. The children were laughing in the sitting room, arguing over a cartoon. The air smelled of fried rice and spices. It felt like a normal day, peaceful and complete. Then her phone rang. She almost ignored it. But something in her heart told her to pick up. "Hello," she said softly. The voice on the other end was cold, formal. "Are you Mrs. Emily Thompson?" "Yes, I am. I'm sorry to inform you. Your husband, James Thompson, was involved in a car accident." Emily froze, her hands began to shake, and he did not survive. The spoon fell from her hand. The world stopped. For a moment she could not breathe. She could not speak. She could not even cry. And it felt like someone had removed the ground beneath her feet. "No, no, that's not possible," she whispered. But it was. That night changed everything. The funeral was held a few days later. Emily stood beside the coffin, staring at the still body of the man she loved. James looked peaceful, almost as if he was sleeping. She touched his hand, hoping, praying that he would wake up. But he didn't. Tears rolled down her cheeks as people whispered words of comfort around her. None of it made sense. None of it eased the pain. She buried her husband that day, or at least she believed she did. Life after James was not easy. The small pension he left behind could barely cover rent, food, and school fees. Emily had no choice but to become both mother and father to their two young children. Every morning she woke up before sunrise, and she cleaned houses. She worked at a small food stall. At night she took laundry jobs. Her body grew tired, but her heart refused to give up. "Stay strong for them," she would whisper to herself. Her children, Daniel and Grace, were her only reason to keep going. Sometimes, at night, when they were asleep, she would sit quietly and stare at James's old photo. "Why did you leave us?" she would ask softly. There was never an answer. 5 years passed. Slowly, Emily learned to live with the pain, not to forget, but to survive. She became stronger, harder, quieter. The laughter in her home was no longer as loud, but it still existed, and that was enough. One hot afternoon, Emily decided to go to the market. It was just another ordinary day. The streets of Lagos were busy as usual. People shouted, cars honked. Traders called out their prices. Life moved fast, as if no one had time to stop or look back. Emily adjusted her scarf and walked through the crowded market, holding her small purse tightly. She needed to buy food. That was all. Nothing special, nothing unusual. But destiny had other plans. As she moved between the stalls, something caught her attention. A man. He was standing near a fruit seller, speaking calmly, his posture confident. There was something about him. Something familiar. Emily stopped walking. Her heart began to beat faster. "No, it can't be," she whispered. The man turned slightly, and in that moment, Emily's world shook again. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat, her entire body froze, because the face she saw was the face of her dead husband, James, alive, and standing right there in the market. Emily blinked, once, twice. She rubbed her eyes. Maybe she was imagining things. Maybe grief had finally broken her mind. But when she looked again, he was still there, the same face, the same eyes, the same voice as he spoke to the seller. It was him. It had to be him. Her legs felt weak, her hands trembled. "This is not real," she whispered. But deep inside, she knew it was. And without thinking, Emily began to follow him, not knowing that this moment would uncover a truth far more shocking than death itself. Emily's heart pounded as she followed the man through the crowded market. Her steps were slow and careful. She didn't want him to notice her, but she couldn't stop. Not now, not when the impossible was standing right in front of her. The man moved calmly between the stalls, greeting people like someone who belonged there. "Good afternoon," he said to a woman selling tomatoes. "How much for this?" he asked another trader. His voice, Emily froze for a second. That voice. It was not just similar, it was exact. Her chest tightened. "James," she whispered under her breath. Her mind was spinning. "This cannot be happening. I buried him. I saw him. I cried over him. Tears began to fill her eyes, but she kept walking, step by step, closer, closer. The crowd pushed around her, but she did not notice. All she could see was him. The way he walked, the way he spoke, even the slight movement of his hands, it was all the same. Nothing had changed, except one thing. He was alive. The man stopped at a fruit stand and picked up an apple. He examined it carefully, just like James used to do. Emily's breath caught again. That small habit, no one else could copy that. No one. She felt a sudden rush of emotion, anger, confusion, fear, hope. Everything mixed together inside her. Her body trembled. She wanted to call his name. She wanted to run to him. She wanted to slap him. She wanted answers. But before she could act, the man moved again. He walked toward a quieter part of the market and stopped in front of a small but elegant boutique. It looked different from the other shops. Clean, organized, expensive. Emily hesitated for a moment. Her heart was beating too fast, but she could not turn back now. The man stepped inside the boutique. Emily followed. Inside, the air felt cooler. The noise of the market faded away. Clothes were neatly arranged on shelves, and the space smelled fresh and calm. A man behind the counter looked up and smiled. "Ah, welcome," he said warmly. The man Emily was following smiled back. "Thomas, how's business?" he asked. Emily stopped breathing. That voice. There was no mistake now. It was James. Not someone who looked like him, not someone who sounded like him. It was him. Her hands began to shake uncontrollably. Her vision blurred. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She took a step forward, then another. "James," she said softly. The man froze, slowly. He turned around. Time stood still. Their eyes met. Emily felt her heart break all over again. It was him, fully, completely, alive. His eyes widened in shock. "Emily," he said. Her name, the way he used to say it. Soft, familiar, real. Tears streamed down her face now. Her voice shook as she spoke. "James." Her chest rose and fell rapidly. How is this possible?" She took another step closer. "You're supposed to be dead." The shop fell silent. Even the man behind the counter, Thomas, stepped back, confused by the tension. Emily's emotions exploded. "Do you know what I went through?" she cried. "I buried you. I mourned you for 5 years." Her hands trembled as she pointed at him. "I struggled. I suffered. I raised our children alone." Her voice broke. "Why?" James stood still. His face was filled with shock, but also something else. Relief, guilt, pain. "Emily," he said slowly, "I can explain." Emily laughed bitterly through her tears. "Explain," she said. Her voice was sharp now. What kind of explanation brings a dead man back to life?" James took a deep breath. He looked at her carefully, as if trying to understand how much she had changed. "You deserve the truth," he said quietly. Emily crossed her arms. Her heart was still racing. "Then speak," she said firmly. James glanced at Thomas. "Give us a moment," he said. Thomas nodded and quietly stepped outside. Now it was just the two of them, alone, face to face, between the past, and a truth that was about to change everything. James looked at Emily again, his voice lowered. "I didn't die, Emily." The words hit her like a storm. Her eyes widened. Her body went cold. "Then what happened?" she whispered. James closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them. And what he said next would shake Emily to her very core. Emily stared at James as if she was seeing a ghost. Her hands were still shaking. Her heart refused to calm down. "I didn't die, Emily," he had said. Those words echoed again and again in her mind. She took a slow step back. Her voice came out in a whisper. "Then, whose body did I bury?" James lowered his head. For a moment he said nothing. The silence felt heavy. Too heavy. "Answer me," Emily cried, her voice breaking. Tears rolled down her cheeks again. "I deserve to know." James lifted his eyes. There was pain in them, deep pain. "I made a terrible decision," he said quietly. Emily's chest tightened. "What decision?" she asked. James took a deep breath. 5 years ago, before the accident, I was in serious trouble." Emily frowned. "What kind of trouble?" James hesitated. Then he spoke. "Business trouble," he said. but not the normal kind. He paused again. I trusted the wrong people. Emily's mind raced. Who? She asked. My business partner, James replied. His name is Victor Cole. Emily narrowed her eyes. I've never heard that name before. You were not supposed to, James said. I kept that part of my life away from you. To protect you. Emily shook her head slowly. No. Don't say that, she said. If you wanted to protect me, you wouldn't have lied to me. James looked down. I know, he said softly, and I regret it every day. He continued. Victor and I were working on a land deal. It looked simple at first, but it became dangerous. Emily listened carefully. Her anger was still there, but now curiosity was growing. That land, James said. I was not ordinary. What do you mean? Emily asked. James looked at her again. It had oil. Emily blinked. Oil? She repeated. Yes, James said. Real oil. Valuable oil. Emily felt her breath catch. Victor wanted full control, James continued. He wanted everything, the money, the power. And you? Emily asked. I wanted to do it the right way, James replied. I wanted to share it fairly. Emily crossed her arms. So what happened? James's face darkened. He turned against me. Emily's eyes widened. He threatened me, James said. He said if I didn't disappear, I would not live to see another day. Emily felt a chill run through her body. I didn't believe him at first, James continued, but then strange things started happening. Like what? Emily asked. I was being followed, he said. My phone was tapped. My movements were being watched. Emily covered her mouth slightly. And then one night, James paused. They tried to kill me, Emily gasped. I survived, James said, but that was when I knew. I had no choice. Emily stared at him. You chose to fake your death? She asked slowly. James nodded. Emily shook her head in disbelief. You let me believe you were dead, she said. Her voice was rising again. You let your children grow up without a father. I didn't want to, James said quickly. His voice was filled with emotion. But it was the only way to keep you safe. Emily laughed bitterly. Safe? She said. There is nothing safe about losing your husband. James's eyes filled with regret. I know, he said. I know I hurt you. He took a step closer. But if I had stayed, you might have lost more than just me. Emily fell silent. Her anger was still strong, but his words, they carried truth, danger, fear. So, the accident, she asked. It was arranged, James said. A body was used to make it look real. Emily felt dizzy. Everything she believed, everything she mourned, was a lie. And after that, she asked weakly. I left Lagos, James said. I went to Abuja. Emily swallowed hard. I stayed hidden, he continued. I focused on the land, the oil, and slowly everything changed. Emily looked at him carefully. I became successful, James said. Very successful. Emily's voice trembled. How successful? James paused, then he said quietly, I became a billionaire. The words hit her like thunder. Emily took a step back. Her world spun again. But, she whispered, if you were alive, why didn't you come back to us? James's face tightened. I tried, he said. I wrote letters. I sent messages. Emily frowned. I never received anything. James nodded slowly. I know, he said. Emily's heart dropped. Victor, James said, he made sure those messages never reached you. Emily's eyes widened again. He told me you had moved on, James continued. He said you had left, that you didn't care anymore. Emily shook her head quickly. That's not true, she said. I never moved on. I know that now, James said softly. Silence filled the room. Two people, separated by lies, reunited by truth. Emily looked at him again. Tears filled her eyes. So all this time, she whispered. Oh, you were alive. James nodded. And everything I went through, she said. Everything I suffered. James lowered his head. I'm sorry, Emily. The apology hung in the air, heavy, painful, real. But one question still remained. Emily wiped her tears slowly, then she looked straight at him. Who are you now, James? She asked. because the man standing before her was no longer the man she buried. And what came next would decide if they could ever be a family again. Emily stood still, her eyes fixed on James. The question she had asked still hung in the air. "Who are you now? James?" James looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke. "I am still the same man who loves you," he said quietly. Emily shook her head slowly. "No," she replied. "That man would never leave his family behind." Those words hit James deeply. He lowered his gaze. "I deserve that," he said. Emily folded her arms. Her emotions were still mixed. Anger, pain, confusion, but also something else. Hope. "Show me," she said suddenly. James looked up. "Show you what?" he asked. "The life you built," Emily replied. "If you want me to believe anything you're saying, then I need to see it." James nodded slowly. "All right," he said. A few hours later, they were on the road. The car James drove was nothing like the old car he used to have. It was sleek, quiet, expensive. Emily sat beside him, staring out the window as the city of Lagos slowly faded behind them. Neither of them spoke much. There was too much to process, too much to understand. As they drove, Emily finally broke the silence. "So, all this time, you were in Abuja?" she asked. "Yes," James replied, "in a village just outside the city." Emily frowned. "A village," she said. James nodded. "It started as a small piece of land," he explained, "but after we discovered oil, everything changed." Emily looked at him. "You really became a billionaire?" she asked softly. James gave a small nod. "Yes." Emily leaned back in her seat. Her mind was still trying to accept everything. The journey felt long, but soon they arrived. The car slowed down as they approached a large gate. Security guards stood at the entrance. They quickly opened the gate as soon as they saw James. Emily's eyes widened. Inside was not just a house, it was a mansion. The compound was large and beautiful. Green lawns, tall palm trees, clean roads. Everything looked perfect. Emily stepped out of the car slowly. She looked around, trying to understand what she was seeing. "This is your home?" she asked. James nodded. Emily let out a soft breath. "This is unbelievable." James watched her carefully. "I built all of this," he said, "but it never felt complete." Emily looked at him. "Because we were not here," she said quietly. James nodded. "Yes." They walked inside the house. The interior was even more stunning. Large rooms, beautiful furniture, bright lights. Everything was carefully arranged. But something felt missing. Emily noticed it. "This place is too quiet," she said. James smiled sadly. I know," he replied. He walked toward a table and picked up a photo frame. Then he handed it to her. Emily looked at it, her eyes filled with tears again. It was an old photo, her, James, and their two children. "You kept this," she whispered. "I kept everything," James said. Emily held the photo close. Her heart softened a little. "Why didn't you come back, after you became successful?" she asked. James sighed. "I wanted to," he said, "many times." "Then why didn't you?" Emily asked. James looked at her seriously. "Because Victor was still watching," he said. Emily froze. "He didn't give up," James continued. "He kept looking for me. He wanted everything." Emily felt fear rise inside her. "If I came back too early," James said, "I could have put you and the children in danger." Emily slowly sat down. "So you stayed away," she said. "Yes," James replied, "until I was strong enough." Emily looked up at him. "Strong enough for what?" she asked. James's face became serious. "To face him," he said. Emily's heart skipped. "You mean Victor?" she asked. James nodded. Emily stood up again. Her voice was filled with concern. "Is he still out there?" James looked at her. His answer was quiet, but heavy. "Yes." Emily felt a chill run through her body. "And now," she said slowly, "he knows you're alive." James did not answer immediately. Then he said, "He will." Silence filled the room again. Emily's mind began to race. After everything, After finally finding her husband again, there was still danger. She looked at James carefully. "So what happens now?" she asked. James stepped closer. "Now," he said, "I fix everything." Emily's heart beat faster. "Does that include us?" she asked softly. James looked straight into her eyes. "Yes," he said, for the first time. Emily allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, her broken family could be whole again. But outside that beautiful mansion, a storm was already coming, and it was only a matter of time before the past caught up with them. That night, Emily could not sleep. She lay on the soft bed inside the large room, staring at the ceiling. Everything around her felt strange, unfamiliar, too perfect. Just a few hours ago, she was in her small home in Lagos, worried about feeding her children. Now she was in a mansion, beside the man she thought was dead. Emily turned her head slowly and looked at James. He was sitting quietly on a chair near the window, deep in thought. The silence between them was no longer filled with anger. It was filled with something else. Healing. "James," she said softly. He looked up immediately. "Yes?" Emily sat up. Her voice was calm now, but emotional. "I have one last question." James nodded. "Ask me anything." Emily took a deep breath. "Do you still choose us?" she asked. James stood up slowly and walked toward her. His face was serious, but his eyes were warm. "I never stopped choosing you," he said. "Or even when I was far away, everything I did was for you and the children." Emily searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt, any sign of lies, but she found none. Tears filled her eyes again. "Then come back," she whispered. "Not just as a man with money, but as a husband, as a father." James moved closer. "I will," he said, "this time, with no secrets." Emily nodded slowly, and for the first time in 5 years, her heart felt at peace. The next morning, they returned to Lagos. Emily's hands trembled as they approached her small house. Her children were inside, waiting, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. James stopped the car. He took a deep breath. "Are you ready?" he asked. Emily nodded. "Yes." They stepped out together. Emily opened the door. "Daniel, Grace," she called. And small footsteps rushed toward her. The children ran into her arms. "Mummy!" they shouted happily. Emily hugged them tightly, her eyes filled with tears again. Then, she slowly pulled back. "There is someone I want you to see," she said gently. The children looked confused. James stepped forward. For a moment, everything went silent. Daniel frowned slightly. Grace tilted her head. Then suddenly, Grace's eyes widened. "Daddy," she whispered. James dropped to his knees. Tears filled his eyes. "Yes," he said softly, "it's me." The children ran to him immediately. They hugged him tightly. "Daddy! Daddy!" they cried. James held them close. His body shook as he cried. Emily stood there, watching. Her heart was full. 5 years of pain, 5 years of loss, 5 years of struggle, all melting away in one moment. And from that day forward, everything changed. James brought Emily and the children back to his home in Abuja. The house that once felt empty now became alive. Laughter returned, joy returned, love returned, but this time, it was stronger, because it had been tested. James made a promise: no more secrets, no more lies, no more distance, and he kept that promise. With his wealth, he gave his family comfort. But more importantly, he gave them his presence. Emily no longer struggled alone. The children no longer felt the absence of a father. They became a family again, not just richer in money, but richer in love. And as for Victor, James made sure he could never hurt them again. The past was finally closed. Emily often sat in the garden, watching her children play with their father. Sometimes, she would smile softly and whisper to herself, "Life gave me pain, but it also gave me a second chance." And this time, she held on to it tightly. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you like the story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.